Grace Chen stood at the entrance of her tech empire's headquarters in Seattle, her perfectly tailored suit reflecting the afternoon sun. She was the city's most celebrated entrepreneur, having built Skynet Technologies from nothing into a billion-dollar software company. Her face graced magazine covers, and her name commanded respect in boardrooms worldwide. But 15 years ago, Grace had been different. Warmer. Kinder. That was before the tragedy that shattered her world. It happened on a crisp October morning. Grace and her husband David had taken their 2-year-old daughter Maya to the annual technology fair downtown. The event was crowded, bustling with thousands of visitors admiring the latest innovations. Grace held Maya's tiny hand as they weaved through the crowd, her daughter's laughter filling the air. "Mommy, look." Maya pointed excitedly at a robot display. "I see it, sweetheart," Grace smiled, squeezing her hand. David stepped away to take an important business call. "I'll be right back," he said, walking toward a quieter corner. Grace bent down to tie Maya's shoelace. "Stay right here, baby. Don't move." It took only 30 seconds. When Grace looked up, Maya was gone. Panic seized her chest. "Maya! Maya!" she screamed, her voice breaking. People around her stopped and stared. Security was called. The entire fairground went into lockdown. Police arrived within minutes, questioning everyone, reviewing security footage, organizing search teams. But Maya had vanished without a trace. The footage showed 2 men in maintenance uniforms approaching Maya. One distracted nearby security while the other spoke to the little girl. Within moments, they had blended into the crowd with Maya between them, her small hand in the taller man's grip. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, they had disappeared into a service exit. The police launched a massive investigation. Grace and David appeared on every news channel, pleading for their daughter's return. They offered a $1 million reward. Private investigators were hired. Psychics were consulted. Every lead was followed, but they all led nowhere. Months turned into years. The case went cold. The loss destroyed Grace and David's marriage. The guilt ate at them both, but they channeled it differently. David blamed himself for stepping away that day. Grace blamed herself for not watching closely enough. Their arguments became vicious. "If you had just held on to her," David said one night, his voice hollow. "Don't you dare," Grace shot back, tears streaming down her face. "You were the one who walked away for a phone call." A phone call. That night, David packed a bag and left. He said he needed time to think, time to process. He drove aimlessly through the rainy Seattle streets, his mind a storm of grief and regret. The truck came out of nowhere. The collision was instant. David's car spun across 3 lanes before crashing into a concrete barrier. He died before the ambulance arrived. Grace received the news at 3 a.m. 2 police officers stood at her door, their faces somber. When they told her, something inside Grace died too. She had lost her daughter and her husband within 2 years. The city whispered. Some pitied her. Others judged her. She was always too focused on work, they said. Maybe if she had been more careful. The criticism hardened Grace like steel. She threw herself into her company with ruthless determination. If she couldn't save her family, she would build an empire. She would be so successful, so powerful, that no one would ever dare question her again. But success came with a price. The warm, compassionate woman Grace had been dyed with her family. In her place emerged someone cold, demanding, and cruel. She fired employees for minor mistakes. She berated assistants for trivial errors. She became known throughout Seattle's tech community as brilliant but brutal. Her household staff bore the worst of it. Drivers were dismissed for being 2 minutes late. Cooks were screamed at for under-seasoning meals. Housekeepers were reduced to tears over missed dust particles. "Ms. Chan has no heart," they whispered among themselves. The tragedy broke her. Grace didn't care. She had learned that caring only brought pain. What she didn't know was that her daughter Maya had survived. On that terrible day at the fair, the two men who took her were part of a kidnapping ring targeting wealthy families. The plan was simple: take the child, demand ransom, return her safely. But greed corrupted the plan. The ringleader, a man named Viktor Petrov, realized exactly whose child they had taken. Grace Chen's daughter could be worth millions. He decided to betray his partners, taking Maya for himself and disappearing with the ransom money that Grace and David had frantically assembled. Victor sold Maya that very night to a woman named Chen Wei, who ran an underground network smuggling children across state lines. But fate intervened in an unexpected way. Chen Wei's assistant, a young woman named Lin, couldn't bear the crying child. Late that night, while Chen Wei slept, Lin wrapped Maya in a blanket and left her at a rural bus station 200 miles away, leaving an anonymous tip with local authorities. When the police arrived, they found only an abandoned child with no identification. Maya, barely 2 years old, couldn't tell them her real name or where she came from. The case was entered into the system as an abandoned child, never connected to the high-profile kidnapping in Seattle. Maya was placed with foster families, moving from home to home through the system. By age 5, she was adopted by an elderly woman named Ruth Martinez who lived in a small farming community in eastern Washington. Ruth was poor but kind, making a living selling homemade preserves at local markets. Ruth renamed the girl Sophia, and for the next 10 years, that's who she became. Sophia Martinez, the adopted daughter of a poor jam maker, had no memory of her life before age 2. She only knew the small farmhouse, the smell of cooking fruit, and Ruth's weathered hands holding hers. When Sophia turned 12, Ruth fell ill with pneumonia. They had no money for proper medical care. Sophia watched helplessly as the only mother she'd ever known grew weaker each day. "Be good, my child," Ruth whispered on her final night. "Your life will be hard, but stay kind. Kindness finds its way home." Ruth died in the spring, leaving Sophia alone once again. If you're enjoying this story of loss, identity, and redemption, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Share this video with friends who love dramatic stories with powerful life lessons. Comment below. What do you think happened to Sophia after Ruth's death? Let's discuss. After Ruth's funeral, 12-year-old Sophia Martinez stood alone at the graveside, watching as the few neighbors who attended walked away. She had no family, no guardian, and nowhere to go. The small farmhouse where she'd lived with Ruth would be seized by the county within weeks for unpaid taxes. Social services came the next day. A tired-looking woman with a clipboard sat across from Sophia at the kitchen table. "I'm sorry, honey," she said gently. "We'll need to place you back in the foster system. Pack your things." But Sophia had learned something in her 12 years. The system had failed her before. She had vague, uncomfortable memories of previous foster homes, cold rooms, indifferent faces, feeling like a burden everywhere she went. Ruth had been different. Ruth had loved her. That night, Sophia made a decision. She wouldn't go back into the system. She would survive on her own. She took Ruth's old recipe book, a worn backpack, some clothes, and the $53 she found in a coffee tin. She remembered Ruth mentioning that she'd once sold preserves in the big city, Seattle, where the money was better. Maybe Sophia could do the same. At dawn, she walked 6 miles to the highway and caught a ride with a truck driver headed west. He was a grandfather figure who asked few questions and dropped her at a Seattle bus station with a warning: "City's tough for a kid alone. Find help fast." Seattle was overwhelming. Skyscrapers stretched endlessly upward. Cars honked constantly. People rushed past without seeing her. Sophia spent her first night on a bench in Pike Place Market, her backpack as a pillow, jumping at every sound. For the next 2 years, Sophia survived. She learned to sell homemade jam using Ruth's recipes at weekend markets. She slept in youth shelters when beds were available and in doorways when they weren't. She learned which restaurant owners would give her leftover food and which streets to avoid after dark. She grew street smart and resilient, but something inside her remained gentle, just as Ruth had taught her. She shared food with other homeless kids. She helped an elderly man carry groceries. She refused to steal, even when hungry. By 14, Sophia had saved enough money to rent a tiny room in a boarding house. It wasn't much, a mattress on the floor, a shared bathroom down the hall, but it was hers. She continued selling jam and took odd jobs, washing dishes, cleaning offices at night, anything that paid cash. But the work was never enough. Bills piled up. Her landlord threatened eviction. One cold November evening, exhausted and desperate, Sophia walked through an affluent neighborhood she'd never visited before. The mansions here were breathtaking. Manicured lawns, multi-car garages, iron gates protecting sprawling estates. She stopped in front of the largest one, a modern architectural masterpiece with glass walls and perfect lighting. A bronze plaque by the gate read, Chen Residence. Sophia didn't know that name meant anything. She only saw opportunity. Rich people needed help, didn't they? Maybe they needed a housekeeper or cook. She pressed the intercom button. Yes. A man's gruff voice crackled through the speaker. Hello, sir, Sophia said politely. My name is Sophia. I'm looking for work. I can clean, cook, do laundry, anything you need. Silence. Then, you crazy? Ms. Chen doesn't hire off the street. Go away. Please, Sophia persisted. I'm a hard worker. I just need a chance. You don't understand, the voice said, softer now. Ms. Chen. She's not a kind woman. She'll eat you alive. Run while you can, kid. Before Sophia could respond, a second voice cut through the intercom, sharp, cold, commanding. Robert, who is that? Open the gate. The guard sighed. Yes, Ms. Chen. The massive gate swung open. Sophia's heart pounded as she walked through, her worn sneakers squeaking on the pristine driveway. Grace Chen stood on the front steps, arms crossed. She was in her early 40s but looked younger, her face hard and beautiful in the exterior lights. She wore an expensive black dress and diamond earrings that caught the light. Her eyes scanned Sophia with cold assessment, the shabby jacket, the scuffed shoes, the hopeful but wary expression. What's your name? Grace demanded. Sophia Martinez, ma'am. How old are you? 14, ma'am. Grace's eyebrow raised. 14. And you're looking for work? Yes, ma'am. I can do anything. I'm responsible and... Where are your parents? Sophia hesitated. Dead, ma'am. I live alone. Something flickered in Grace's eyes. Too quick to identify. Pain. Recognition. It vanished immediately. I see, Grace said coolly. She studied Sophia's face in the light, and for a moment, something tugged at her consciousness. The girl's eyes. The shape of her face. Something familiar but impossible to place. Grace shook it off. She saw desperate people every day. They all looked the same eventually. I don't normally hire children, Grace said. But you're here, and I just fired my last housekeeper. So here's the deal. You'll work every day, starting at 5 a.m. You'll clean, cook, do laundry, and anything else I require. You'll live in the servants' quarters behind the kitchen. You'll earn $300 a week, which is generous for someone your age. But, her voice turned to ice, you follow my rules exactly. No mistakes. No excuses. No stealing. Break anything, and it comes out of your pay. Disappoint me once, and you're gone. Understood. Sophia nodded quickly. $300 a week was more than she'd ever made. Yes, ma'am. I understand. Good. Robert will show you to your room. You start tomorrow morning at 5 sharp. Don't be late. Grace turned and walked inside without another word, the door closing behind her with finality. Robert, the security guard, appeared from the gatehouse. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a worried expression. Come on, kid, he said gently, leading her around the mansion to a small building in back. Let me show you where you'll sleep. But listen. He stopped and looked at her seriously. Ms. Chen isn't cruel without reason. She lost everything years ago, her daughter, her husband. It broke something in her. She takes her pain out on everyone around her. If you're smart, you'll work hard, keep your head down, and save every penny. Then you'll leave as soon as you can. Sophia listened but didn't fully understand. She was too grateful for a room, a job, and steady pay. That night, lying on a real bed for the first time in months, Sophia whispered a prayer Ruth had taught her. Thank you for shelter. Help me be strong. Help me be kind. She had no idea that she'd just entered the home where she'd lived as a baby. That the cold woman who'd hired her was the mother who'd searched for her desperately 15 years ago. That the bedroom above her head had once been a nursery painted pink, with a mobile hanging over a crib, her crib. Fate had brought them together. But it would take much more pain before the truth would emerge. Sophia's first day in the Chen mansion began at 4:30 a.m. when her phone alarm buzzed in the small servants' quarters. She dressed quickly in the plain uniform Grace had left for her, black pants and a white shirt, and tied her hair into a neat ponytail. The mansion was silent as she entered through the back door. The kitchen alone was larger than any place Sophia had ever lived. Gleaming marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, a wine refrigerator that probably cost more than most cars. She stood there for a moment, overwhelmed. Don't just stand there gawking. Sophia jumped. Grace had appeared in the doorway wearing a silk robe, her hair perfect despite the early hour. She held a tablet in one hand and coffee in the other. The floors, Grace said, gesturing with her coffee cup. I want every inch spotless before I leave for work at 7. Use the cleaning supplies in the closet. And make my breakfast, egg white omelette, no salt, wheat toast, fresh orange juice. My schedule is on the counter. Yes, ma'am, Sophia said quickly. Grace's eyes narrowed. One more thing. Don't touch anything in my office upstairs. Don't enter my bedroom unless I specifically call you. Don't answer the door or the phone. And don't speak unless spoken to. Clear? Yes, ma'am. Grace walked away without another word, her heels clicking on the marble. Sophia worked frantically. She mopped the endless floors, polished the counters, and carefully prepared Grace's breakfast exactly as instructed. By 6:45, she was exhausted but proud. Everything looked perfect. Grace appeared at 7 sharp, dressed in a grey power suit. She glanced at her plate, took one bite of the omelette, and immediately spit it out. What is this garbage? She hissed. Sophia's stomach dropped. I followed your instructions, ma'am. Egg whites, no salt. It's disgusting. Undercooked. Slimy. Grace pushed the plate away in disgust. Did you even try to make it properly? I'm sorry, ma'am. I can make another. I don't have time for your mistakes. Grace stood abruptly. I'll eat at the office. This is coming out of your pay. She grabbed her briefcase and left, leaving Sophia standing alone in the kitchen, fighting back tears. Robert found her 20 minutes later, staring at the rejected breakfast. She do this to you already? He asked gently. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. Listen to me, Robert said. It won't matter what you do. She'll find fault in everything. Her last housekeeper was a trained chef. Ms. Chen fired her for over-seasoning the chicken. The one before that got fired for folding towels wrong. She goes through staff every few months. Then why does she keep hiring people? Sophia asked. Robert sighed. Because deep down, she's lonely. And miserable. And she doesn't know how to be any other way anymore. The days that followed established a brutal pattern. Sophia worked from before dawn until late at night, cleaning, cooking, organizing, running errands. Nothing she did was ever good enough. When she polished the silverware until it gleamed, Grace ran her finger over a single fork and declared it filthy. When she spent 3 hours preparing a complicated dinner, Grace took one bite and dumped the entire plate in the trash. When she carefully organized Grace's closet by color and season, Grace screamed at her for touching her things. The verbal abuse was constant. Stupid girl. Worthless. I should have known better than to hire street trash. Other staff members witnessed it with a mixture of pity and relief that they weren't the current target. The cook, an older woman named Maria, would sometimes slip Sophia extra food. The gardener, Tom, would give her encouraging nods. But no one intervened. They'd all learned that defending someone only made Grace angrier. Sophia endured it all. She needed the money. She needed the room. And somewhere deep inside, she still believed what Ruth had taught her. Stay kind, even when others aren't. But it was hard. So hard. One night, 3 weeks into the job, Sophia was washing dishes after Grace had thrown yet another meal away uneaten. Her hands were raw from harsh soap, and tears streamed down her face. "Why does she hate me so much?" she whispered to herself. "What did I do?" She didn't know that 2 floors above her, Grace sat alone in her office, staring at an old photo album. Pictures of Maya as a baby. The nursery Grace had decorated with such love. David smiling, holding their daughter. Grace's hand trembled as she touched the photos. Every day, she looked at them. Every day, they reminded her of what she'd lost. And every day, something about her new housekeeper nagged at her consciousness. That face. Those eyes. The way the girl held herself with quiet dignity despite everything. It reminded Grace of someone. But who? She shook her head angrily and slammed the album shut. It didn't matter. The girl was nobody. Just another employee who would eventually disappoint her and leave, like everyone else. But fate was working in ways Grace couldn't see. The next morning, Detective Sarah Park called Grace's private line. "Ms. Chen? It's Detective Park. We spoke a few months ago about your daughter's case." Grace's heart raced. "Yes. Have you found something?" "We've reopened the investigation. There's new technology, DNA databases, facial recognition software. We'd like to take a fresh sample from you for comparison. There are several unidentified children who entered the system around the time Maya disappeared. It's a long shot, but..." "I'll do it," Grace said immediately. "When?" "Come by the station tomorrow." "And Ms. Chen?" "There's something else. Do you remember any distinctive marks on your daughter? Birthmarks, scars?" Grace closed her eyes, remembering. Yes. Maya had a small crescent-shaped birthmark on her shoulder blade. Right side. "Thank you. That helps narrow things down." When Grace hung up, her hands were shaking. After 15 years, could there really be hope? That afternoon, she was distracted, pacing her office, unable to focus. She snapped at everyone, her assistant, her board members, even important clients. When she came home that evening, she found Sophia cleaning the library, carefully dusting each book. Grace watched from the doorway, unnoticed. The girl worked with such care, such attention to detail, even though Grace had never once thanked her. "You," Grace called out harshly. Sophia spun around, startled. "Yes, ma'am." "Come here." Sophia approached nervously, expecting another criticism. Grace studied her face closely, this time really looking. The high cheekbones. The shape of her eyes. The girl even had the same habit Maya had of tucking her hair behind her left ear when nervous. "How old did you say you were?" Grace asked. 14, ma'am. "When's your birthday?" I don't know exactly, ma'am. Ruth, my guardian, she found me when I was very young. She guessed I was born sometime in the spring, maybe April or May." Grace's breath caught. Maya had been born in April. "And you said you lived in a foster home before Ruth adopted you?" "Yes, ma'am. But I don't remember much from before then." Grace's mind raced. No. It couldn't be. Maya would be 15 now, not 14. And this girl's name was Sophia Martinez, not Maya Chen. There were probably thousands of orphan girls the right age. Why are you asking, ma'am? Sophia asked quietly. Grace's face hardened instantly. That's none of your concern. Get back to work. Yes, ma'am. Sophia returned to dusting, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. But Grace couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Could it be possible? After all these years, could her daughter have been this close? No. She was being ridiculous. Grief and desperate hope were making her see connections that didn't exist. Still, she decided she would pay more attention to this girl. Watch her more carefully. Look for any other signs. What Grace didn't know was that the truth would reveal itself in the cruelest way possible, through her own violence. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. The DNA test results took 2 weeks to process. 2 weeks during which Grace Chen became increasingly unstable. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Her company's board members noticed her distraction during meetings. Her business partners worried about missed deadlines. But Grace could only think about one thing. What if Maya was still alive somewhere? What if, after 15 years, she could finally bring her daughter home? The detective had explained that they'd found 3 unidentified girls in the foster system from that time period who matched Maya's approximate age and description. All 3 had been abandoned or found without identification between 2008 and 2010. DNA comparison would determine if any of them were Maya Chen. Grace swung between desperate hope and crushing despair. She became even more volatile at home, lashing out at every staff member. Everyone walked on eggshells around her. Sophia bore the brunt of it. Each day brought new criticisms, new punishments, new humiliations. On Tuesday, Grace accused her of stealing, she hadn't. On Wednesday, Grace docked her pay because a towel had a microscopic stain. On Thursday, Grace screamed at her for 20 minutes because the coffee was too hot. Sophia's breaking point came on Friday evening. She'd spent the entire day deep cleaning the mansion from top to bottom. Every surface sparkled. Every corner was dust-free. She'd even organized Grace's shoe closet by heel height and color, something Grace had mentioned wanting done months ago. Exhausted but hopeful for once, Sophia waited in the kitchen for Grace to come home from work. Grace walked in at 7 p.m., phone pressed to her ear, clearly arguing with someone about a business deal. She was in a foul mood, having just lost a major contract to a competitor. She barely glanced at Sophia. "Where's my dinner?" "It's ready, ma'am. Your favorite, salmon with asparagus and—" "I don't want salmon. Make me pasta." Sophia's heart sank. The salmon had taken an hour to prepare perfectly. "Yes, ma'am. It'll be ready in 20 minutes. Grace's eyes flashed with anger. 20 minutes. I'm hungry now. Why didn't you have pasta already made? You said this morning you wanted salmon, ma'am. I followed your— Don't make excuses. Grace slammed her briefcase down. You're useless. Completely useless. You can't even get a simple dinner right. Something in Sophia finally cracked. "I've been working since 4:30 this morning," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I cleaned every room. I organized your closet exactly how you wanted. I made the dinner you asked for this morning. I'm trying my best. Your best." Grace's voice rose to a shout. "Your best is pathetic. You think you're special? You think because I gave you a job, you can talk back to me. I'm not talking back, I'm just— Get out of my sight." Sophia flinched but stood her ground. Tears streamed down her face. "Why do you hate me so much? I don't understand what I did to make you treat me this way." Grace's face contorted with rage. She grabbed the plate of perfectly cooked salmon and hurled it across the kitchen. It shattered against the wall, food and porcelain exploding everywhere. "You want to know why?" Grace screamed, advancing on Sophia. "Because you remind me of everything I lost. You stand there with your innocent face, your stupid hope, acting like the world owes you something. You remind me that I had a daughter once, and I lost her. She grabbed Sophia by the arm, shaking her violently. You remind me every single day that I'm broken, that I'm alone, that everything I touch turns to dust. Stop. You're hurting me. Sophia cried, trying to pull away. Grace shoved her hard. Sophia stumbled backward, her head hitting the edge of the kitchen island with a sickening crack. She crumpled to the ground, dazed. Grace stood over her, breathing hard, her hands shaking. For a moment, she stared at the girl on her kitchen floor, at the blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. What had she done? Sophia pushed herself up slowly, pain radiating through her skull. As she rose, her uniform shirt shifted, sliding off one shoulder. And there, visible on her right shoulder blade, was a small crescent-shaped birthmark. Grace's world stopped. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Sophia pulled her shirt back up, confused by Grace's sudden change in demeanor. "Ma'am." Grace couldn't breathe. The birthmark. The exact shape and placement the detective had asked about. The age. The timeline. The fact that this girl had been found abandoned as a toddler. "Take off your shirt," Grace commanded, her voice hollow. "What?" "Your shoulder. Let me see your shoulder. Now." Frightened and confused, Sophia slowly pulled down her collar, revealing the birthmark more clearly. Grace's legs gave out. She collapsed to the kitchen floor, a horrible wail escaping her throat. "Maya! Oh God, Maya!" "My name is Sophia," the girl said, backing away. "No." Grace sobbed. "No, you're Maya. You're my daughter. That birthmark. I've seen it every day of your life. I kissed it when you were a baby. You're my Maya." Sophia shook her head violently. "You're crazy. My mother is dead. Ruth raised me. She found me. Because you were stolen." Grace screamed through her tears. "You were kidnapped from me when you were 2 years old. I searched for you for years. I never stopped looking. And you've been here in my house, and I've been." She looked at her hands in horror. "I've been hurting you. My own daughter. I've been." The truth crashed over Grace like a tidal wave. Every cruel word she'd spoken. Every time she'd humiliated this girl, starved her, hurt her. She'd been torturing her own child. "No," Grace moaned, rocking back and forth. "What have I done? What have I done?" Sophia stood frozen, her mind unable to process what she was hearing. This woman, this cruel, hateful woman, was her mother? "I don't believe you," Sophia whispered. "You're lying." Grace looked up with desperate eyes. "Your birthday is April 15th. You had a stuffed elephant named Peanut. You were wearing a blue dress with yellow flowers the day you were taken. Your father's name was David. He died 2 years after you disappeared. We lived in this house. Your nursery was upstairs, painted pink with stars on the ceiling." Sophia's head spun. Those details. How could this woman know them unless... "The police have my DNA on file," Grace continued frantically. "We can test you. We can prove it. Please, Maya, Sophia, please let me prove it." But Sophia was backing toward the door. "Stay away from me. Please. You hurt me." Sophia shouted. "You called me worthless. You threw food at me. You made me feel like I was nothing. Even if you are my mother, even if that's true, it doesn't change what you've done." She ran from the kitchen, through the mansion, and out into the Seattle night, leaving Grace collapsed on the floor, surrounded by broken dishes and shattered lives. Robert found Grace there an hour later, still sobbing, still rocking, still whispering, "What have I done?" Sophia ran through the Seattle streets with no destination, no plan, just desperate need to get away. Rain had started falling, cold and relentless, but she barely felt it. Her mind was chaos. That woman, Grace Chen, claimed to be her mother. Her real mother. The mother who'd lost her 15 years ago. Could it be true? Sophia thought about Ruth, the woman who'd raised her, who'd loved her unconditionally. Ruth had always been honest about finding her abandoned at a bus station. Ruth had told her that somewhere out there, she had a birth mother who'd either abandoned her or lost her. But Grace Chen? The woman who'd made her life hell for the past month? Sophia's chest tightened with pain that had nothing to do with the cut on her forehead. If Grace really was her mother, that meant years of searching had ended with them in the same house, and Grace hadn't recognized her, hadn't loved her, had instead hurt her in ways that Sophia would carry forever. How was that fair? She found herself at Pike Place Market, the same place she'd slept on benches 2 years ago. It was late, and the market was closing. Sophia huddled under an awning, shivering, watching the rain. Maria, the cook from the mansion, found her there at midnight. Robert had sent her looking, worried sick about the girl. "Sophia," Maria said gently, sitting down beside her. "Come back. You'll freeze out here." "I can't," Sophia whispered. "I can't go back there." "I know what happened," Maria said. "Robert told me. And I know this is overwhelming. But hiding in the rain won't solve anything." "She's my mother," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "My actual mother. And she treated me like garbage. She looked at me every day and saw nothing. How am I supposed to forgive that?" Maria was quiet for a long moment. "You're not," she finally said. "Not right away. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't something you owe her. But running away won't give you the answers you need either." "What answers?" "DNA tests. Legal proof. The full story of what happened to you. Financial support. Sophia, if Grace really is your mother, you're entitled to everything she has. Child support for all the years you were gone. Education. A future." Maria took her hand. "Don't let your pride cost you what you deserve." Sophia thought about Ruth, who'd always been practical even in her kindness. Ruth would have said the same thing. Be smart, not just strong. "I'll go back," Sophia said finally. "But not for her. For me. To get what I'm owed." When they returned to the mansion, Grace was sitting in the dark living room, still in the same clothes, her face swollen from crying. She stood when Sophia entered, hope and fear battling in her eyes. "Sophia." "Don't." Sophia held up her hand. "I'm only here to get the DNA test done. After that, I'm leaving." Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Of course. Whatever you want. I've already called the detective. She can meet us tomorrow morning." The next day, Detective Sarah Park arrived with a DNA testing kit. She swabbed both Grace and Sophia, carefully labeling the samples. "Results will take about a week," she explained. "But based on the birthmark and the timeline, I'm fairly confident we'll get a match." That week was the longest of both their lives. Sophia stayed in the servants' quarters, refusing to speak to Grace except when absolutely necessary. She spent her days researching her rights, contacting lawyers, planning her future. Grace, meanwhile, spiraled into the deepest depression she'd experienced since David's death. She couldn't eat or sleep. She called in sick to work for the first time in a decade. She spent hours sitting outside Sophia's door, not knocking, just being close. She called her therapist for an emergency session. "I don't know how to fix this," Grace sobbed. "I found my daughter, and she hates me. And she has every right to hate me. What I did to her." "Grace," her therapist said gently. "This isn't about fixing it quickly. This is about accountability. Real, genuine accountability for years of displaced pain and cruelty. Have you apologized?" "I tried." "She won't listen." "Then show her, don't tell her. Show her through actions that you're willing to change. Show her that you see her now, really see her." Grace thought about that. What could she do? She started by calling her lawyer and having him draft documents transferring half her fortune into a trust for Sophia, accessible whether or not Sophia ever spoke to her again. She contacted the best private schools in Seattle and set up full scholarship applications in Sophia's name. She hired a private investigator to track down every detail of what had happened to Maya after the kidnapping, so Sophia would have answers. On day 6, the DNA results came back. Detective Park called Grace's cell phone. It's a match. Sophia Martinez is Maya Chen. Your daughter. Grace's knees buckled. Even though she'd known in her heart, hearing it confirmed broke her all over again. She went to Sophia's quarters and knocked. The results are in. You're my daughter. Officially. Sophia opened the door, her face unreadable. I know. The detective called me too. They stood there, mother and daughter, separated by more than just a doorway. I've set up a trust fund for you, Grace said quietly. $50 million. It's yours whether you stay or go. I've also arranged for therapy, the best trauma specialists in Seattle. And I've hired an attorney to help you with whatever you need legally. Sophia blinked in surprise. Why? Because you're my daughter. And because I owe you more than I could ever repay. Grace's voice cracked. I can't undo what I did. I can't take back the words or the cruelty. But I can give you resources to build whatever life you choose. Without me, if that's what you want. What do you want? Sophia asked. Grace wiped her eyes. I want you to be happy. I want you to heal. And selfishly, I want to know you. I want a chance to be your mother. But I understand if that's impossible. Sophia studied the woman in front of her. Grace looked different now. Smaller, broken, human. The monster from the past month had revealed herself to be something else. A deeply wounded person who'd hurt others because she couldn't face her own pain. It didn't excuse anything. But it explained it. I need time, Sophia said. I need therapy. I need to process 15 years of not knowing who I was, and then coming here and being treated like that. I need to be angry. I need to grieve. I understand. But, Sophia continued, her voice stronger, I also need to understand my story. Where I came from. Who my father was. What my life was supposed to be. Grace nodded eagerly. I can tell you everything. I have photo albums, videos, your baby clothes. I kept everything. Okay, Sophia said. We can start there. But this isn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I know. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. Not reconciliation, exactly, but understanding. Grace told Sophia stories about David, about the life they'd had before tragedy struck. She showed her the pink nursery, still preserved exactly as it had been 15 years ago. She explained how the kidnapping had destroyed her, how she'd let grief turn her into someone cruel. I blamed the world, Grace said one evening as they sat in the library, looking at old photos. I blamed God. I blamed your father. I blamed myself. And I took it out on everyone around me, especially people who reminded me of what I'd lost. That's not an excuse, Sophia said. No, it's not. It's just the truth. Sophia started therapy 3 times a week. She processed the abuse she'd suffered, not just from Grace but from the foster system, from poverty, from loss. She grieved Ruth properly. She allowed herself to be angry at Grace without guilt. And slowly, carefully, she began to build boundaries. I'll have dinner with you on Thursdays, she told Grace. Just dinner. We'll talk. But the rest of the week, I need space. Okay. And you need therapy too. Real therapy. Not just because of me, but because of everything you've been carrying. Grace agreed. She started seeing a trauma specialist twice a week, unpacking 15 years of unprocessed grief. Something else changed too. Grace began making amends to others she'd hurt. She called former employees and apologized. She donated millions to organizations helping missing children and foster youth. She used her public platform to speak about the importance of mental health and not letting tragedy turn you cruel. I hurt people because I was hurting, she said in one interview that went viral. But pain doesn't justify causing more pain. I have to own that. The Seattle tech community was shocked. Grace Chen, the Ice Queen, was becoming human. Sophia watched all of this from a distance, noting the changes but not trusting them completely. Trust would take years to rebuild, if it ever could be. But one Thursday evening, 6 months after the DNA test, something shifted. They were having dinner, talking about Sophia's college applications. She decided on computer science. Apparently it ran in the family, when Grace suddenly put down her fork. I need to tell you something, she said. And I need you to really hear me. Sophia waited. Finding you, even in the worst possible way, saved my life, Grace said, her voice shaking. I was becoming a monster. I had all this money, all this power, and I was using it to make everyone around me miserable. If you hadn't walked through that gate, if the truth hadn't come out the way it did, I would have died alone and hated. She looked directly at Sophia. You saved me. Not by forgiving me, you don't owe me that. But by being brave enough to confront me with the truth of what I'd become. By refusing to accept my cruelty as normal. By demanding better. Tears rolled down Grace's cheeks. I know I can never be the mother you deserved. The mother I was before I lost you. But I'm trying to be a better person now because of you. And whether or not you ever call me Mom, whether or not we ever have a real relationship, I need you to know that you matter. Your life matters. Your pain matters. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sophia sat quietly, processing. This was what she'd needed, not just an apology, but genuine understanding of the harm done. Thank you, she finally said, for saying that. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. As Sophia was leaving, she paused at the door. Grace. Yes. The nursery upstairs. The pink one. Would it be okay if I went in there sometimes? Grace's face lit up with fragile hope. Of course. Anytime you want. It's your room. It always was. Sophia nodded and left. That night, she climbed the stairs to the second floor and opened the door to the nursery. Everything was exactly as Grace had described. Pink walls, star-painted ceiling, a crib in the corner, stuffed animals on shelves. She sat on the floor and imagined herself as a baby here, loved and safe. She imagined the mother Grace had been before tragedy broke her. And for the first time since learning the truth, Sophia cried, not from anger or pain, but from grief for the life they'd both lost. Downstairs, Grace heard the crying through the vents. She wanted to run up, to comfort, to fix. But she stayed where she was. Some healing had to happen alone. Epilogue. 3 years later. Sophia graduated high school with honors and a full ride to Stanford. Grace attended the ceremony, sitting in the back row at Sophia's request, not as the celebrated tech mogul but as a mother trying to earn back trust. They had dinner every Thursday still. Sometimes they talked about business. Sophia was starting to show interest in Skynet technologies. Sometimes they talked about the past, processing old pain. Sometimes they just existed together quietly. Forgiveness came slowly, in pieces. Sophia forgave Grace for not recognizing her. Then, months later, for the cruelty. Then, even later, for the years they'd lost. But some wounds never fully heal. Sophia still had nightmares. Grace still carried guilt that therapy could only manage, not erase. Do you think we'll ever be normal? Sophia asked one Thursday evening. Grace considered this. I don't think there's a normal for us. We lost 15 years. We hurt each other. But maybe we can build something new. Something honest. Sophia smiled slightly. I'd like that. That summer, Sophia asked if she could officially change her name to Sophia Maya Chen, keeping the name Ruth gave her while honoring her birth identity. Grace cried when she heard this. You'd do that. Ruth raised me. She loved me. I won't erase that, Sophia said firmly. But I'm also your daughter. I can be both. The legal documents were filed. Sophia Maya Chen became her official name. On Sophia's 18th birthday, Grace hosted a small celebration. Just Sophia, Maria, Robert, Tom the gardener, and a few of Sophia's friends from school. "I want to make a toast," Grace said, raising her glass. 18 years ago, I held my baby daughter for the last time before she was taken. I spent 15 years searching for her, then 2 more years hurting her because I didn't recognize what was right in front of me. Her voice caught. But she found her way home anyway. Through foster care, through poverty, through my cruelty, she survived. She stayed kind. She stayed strong. And she gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Grace looked at Sophia with tears in her eyes. "You are the bravest person I know. And I'm honored to be your mother, even though I failed you so completely. Thank you for letting me try again." Sophia stood and hugged Grace, the first real hug they'd shared since the truth came out. "Thank you for trying," Sophia whispered. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Grace and Sophia would spend years in therapy, working through trauma. Their relationship would always carry scars. But they were building something real. Not perfect, but honest. And they were doing it together. Grace learned that being rich meant nothing without compassion. That power without kindness is tyranny. That unprocessed grief turns people into monsters. Sophia learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing harm. It's about choosing not to let bitterness define your future. It's about breaking cycles instead of perpetuating them. And both of them learned that sometimes the greatest redemption comes not from being saved, but from choosing to see people, really see them, before it's too late. The poor girl Grace had kicked and abused had been her own daughter all along. The lesson was painful, but it was clear. Every person we encounter might be carrying an invisible burden. Every cruel word might be directed at someone who needs compassion most. Treat people with dignity. Look beyond surfaces. Let tragedy make you kinder, not crueler. Because you never know whose life you're changing, or who might change yours. The end. Thank you for journeying through this powerful story with us. What lessons did Sophia and Grace's story teach you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to treating others with more compassion, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with everyone you know. Stories like these remind us that it's never too late to change, never too late to see people truly, and never too late to choose kindness over cruelty. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful story. And remember, be kind to everyone you meet, because you never know what battles they're fighting or what role you might play in their life. See you in the next story.